Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L, and now let's catch up on Shokugeki no Soma chapter 288 and kinda 287. I started recording this last week, but that recording wasn't really that good. I was just gonna reserve my judgment till this week, and this week we got the information, and it is pretty awesome. Well, that's a lie, not really. I'm of two minds with the ending of 288. One mind is, I really like the meaning behind it. I think the meaning, as we talk about this chapter, will make sense in the context of Soma's character. But when it comes to the rhetoric, I am not a fan. I am not a fan of this at all. And it's mostly because I just find it silly. Because to some degree, it's just, I think it's more narrative is warping the character's abilities more than anything else. But I think you'll notice that the meaning of the whole thing is really consistent with the spirit of Soma. So that's really good. It's just I don't think the rhetoric lived up to that standard. We'll just start talking about it. So in terms of meaning, what Soma ultimately did for the chapter 288, his solution, was effectively he brute forced his way through this whole thing. Right? Because you saw what he did. He just got a lot of ingredients and he just made them all together. He put them in a nice little box, and as the girl says, this was an addition. It was just pure brute force. Right? As opposed to Tsukasa's more intuitive heuristic or his intuitiveness. Now, personally, I'm a fan of brute force. I love brute force. When it comes to programming or when it comes to breaking a password, I love brute force. Brute force is one of the best ways to do things. If you can't figure something out, just brute force your way through, plug in all the numbers, and you'll eventually get to your solution. The problem with brute force is, of course, that it is not it is not elegant. It is not quick. It is not efficient. It is just throwing things at a wall till something works. And honestly, when you listen to that, that's pretty much Soma, right? Like, he's the kind of guy that fails and he goes back, does it again over and over and over. That's how he improves. So in terms of meaning, Soma going for the brute force method, or in this case, like the Soma equivalent of the brute force method, which is just pound the girl with a lot of food, was cool. It makes sense to his character, and when you compare it to Tsukasa, you think about the situation. Yeah, it makes sense that Soma would use brute force while Tsukasa, being genius he is, gets it on the first try because he knows the simple heuristic. I think that is amazing. In terms of maintaining that kind of disparity. Now, mind you, I wish the disparity wasn't so pronounced between the two parties. But it is kind of there. Now, in terms of skill, at the end of the day, I do think that Tsukasa shows more skill, because we'll talk about the multiplication and addition logic in a bit. But there is also something that should be appreciated in Soma realizing that because the things are pre-cooked, he can take some liberties into cooking. I think it is great that Soma can take advantage of the nature of convenience store items and hasten his cooking with that, or just, it allows him to make something so vast. I think that was a really good call. And, you can kind of say, well, that's kind of the diner route in Soma. So that was really cool. I think when you look at the style of this whole thing, when it comes to how Soma applied it, you could say this is true to Soma's style and this is true to Soma's history. So I think that's really good. That's super good. The problem is the rhetoric that got us here. I think there's a lot of things just kind of either off about it, or it just doesn't make sense all that well. And it really revolves around the fact that Soma is better than Soma's better than this, right? He's usually not better than the brute force method, because that was pretty much Soma at his just A+. But even in chapter 287, it was just odd. My big assumption going into this was that Soma should really have the skills to be able to get through without having to owe this girl $14, right? He should have the skills to get that far. And it's tough. Like in the previous chapter, he gave the girl the dish, right? She ate it and then she gave it the -14. Okay, cool. the author wants to establish that Soma's not doing good enough here, even though I find that very strange, because I thought the spirit of Yukihira revolved around giving people affordable food that is actually really, really good, like cuisine's level, right? Like it's Joichiro's recipes at the end of the day, right? So the whole model of Yukihira, or the spirit of Yukihira, to me meant that anything can be made to be a great meal. That's what I thought we were dealing with. I thought even a $10 meal at Yukihira is worth, say, $50, like Soma thought it would be last chapter. And then the girl just shot it down altogether. In this chapter, however, Soma again goes at it with a Yukihira idea or a recipe. And the thing here is that when the girl starts, is her name Allenby? I think it is. When she starts eating, right? Before she starts eating, she tells Soma, oh, this is gonna be another $14 or a minus $14 meal. She takes the first bite, right? And then she starts eating more. And what I'm wondering is there such a difference between that first bite and Soma's first dish? Because that first bite's what gets her. So ideally, this whole situation of she's saying that this is going to be minus $14, and then all of a sudden she takes a bite and then she needs to take more. That's what we kind of imagined, or that's what I kind of imagined was going to happen in the last chapter. So it's not that Soma doesn't have the skills here. Because even without the addition or the onslaught of food after that, that first bite was good enough to make her want to eat more. So, you know, I just found that odd. The reality of the situation is that if that first bite was at the same level as the previous dish, that first little bit of flavor she got, she wouldn't have continued eating. So my real question is, why did Soma just start so low in his spectrum? Why did he not try a little bit harder when he's in a contest? Mind you, last chapter he thought it was going to be $50, so he wasn't planning on getting through on that first one. It's just, at the end of the day, I think the author went too hard in making Soma start from a very low point. I think that was not believable. I think giving Soma a $25 even would have been better than this whole minus 14, because the minus 14 later plays into the addition thing. And now to just talk about addition and multiplication, you know, on one level you can tell there's meaning behind what the girl's saying, but on the logical side, when you hear multiplication and addition, we've all done math. We all know multiplication is shorthand for addition. Multiplication is just quickened addition. Right? At the base, multiplication is just a lot of addition, right? Because we'll just go simple. If you're doing 72 times 3, you know what you're doing. You're adding 72 multiple times. It's 72 plus 72 plus 72. Now, mind you, you can kind of tell some of the meaning that you can take away from that is that addition takes longer, and ultimately that's reflected in Soma's dishes. So what's the real difference between the addition and multiplication, really? Well, it's kind of the same thing as if you're a student and you have to do a multiplication question and you do, it's 2 times 4, and instead of doing the 2 times 4, you just do 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 because you didn't learn your multiplication tables. And then it's like, okay, that wasn't elegant, but you got the answer. And that's pretty much what it is. It's just an issue of when they refer to multiplication, the only thing that you can really apply there is that there are less numbers than you're working, so it looks prettier and it's faster, it's quicker. And that is ultimately reflected in Tsukasa being able to get ahead of Soma. But the thing here is that Soma using addition in no way should be anything that takes away from it, because at the end of the day, addition is a building block of multiplication. Like, man, if Tsukasa tripled the value of the ingredients he had, all he did was add the same value 2 times onto the original value, right? Like, if you want to break it down that way, but you can tell what they're trying to say. It's just the multiplication means like he was able to do more with less because there's less numbers on the field or less ingredients on the field. Whereas with Soma's addition, you can see all the things that went into that value. They're right there in front of you. You know how this person did this math question. And you know it wasn't the most elegant thing, right? That's ultimately the distinction. But just the rhetoric that made it sound as though addition was this horrible thing. It's like, no, it's not. You're just being a dick. And that's something that's just been carrying through for these people. They keep making fun of Soma's diner routes. And this is just like, why? Why are you doing this? Like, this girl says she's never had a course meal this freeing. She has to visit a diner. That's what I think's going on. Ultimately, I think this was interesting. I think the author kind of powered Soma down a little bit for this because he needs to have that underdog story. But I do like the meaning that comes through with this whole rhetoric of multiply and addition, even though I think it's a bit too hastily applied on Allenby's side. I assume her name's Allenby. I'm just gonna call her Akane because she pretty much looks like her. Anyway, yeah. I'm not a fan of the rhetoric. The meaning is still pretty good though. Now, as this chapter ends, I am really curious. I want to know where exactly does Soma's value lie. Now, honestly, here's the thing. Truthfully, Soma's dish could be, in idea-wise, it could be infinite, right? Because for him to just have a higher value, all he needs to do is add in more higher level cookings, right? Or like a higher level dish. Since it's based on different compartments, he could just continuously add until he got to the number he needed to reach. So that's going to be interesting. Depending on how the author wants to do it, he could say that Soma beat Tsukasa, but even if Soma beat Tsukasa, you could still say, well, Tsukasa was able to make more with less, and that's not something Soma was able to do. So you could still say that there is some degree of a skill divide between the two, and I think that would be good. Ultimately, yeah, man, I find this so ridiculous. There's something I find just off with the foundation of this whole exercise, and I think the part that bothers me is that for Soma's dish to work, every piece in there has to be worthwhile, and then it just makes me wonder, why didn't Soma just make a worthwhile thing in the first round, right? It's interesting. Anyway, those are my thoughts for this chapter. Like I said, it's true to Soma's spirit, but I'm not a fan of the rhetoric. Anyway, guys, let me know what you thought down below. And until next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.